When building an application, it's important you understand what your users are doing. Whether you need to understand how a funnel works, maybe what the user path looks like, or maybe you just need general web analytics. Both of those usually require some sort of analytical product, whether you're using something like Vercel's Analytics, or you're using Plausible, or you're self-hosting yourself using something like Tinybird. But then you need to go deeper than that. Maybe you need session replays to understand what's going on with your user base. Maybe you need feature flags to give certain customers certain new features or links into a beta. Maybe you need to A/B test your latest landing page to understand, does it really actually convert, or do we need to make more tweaks? Or finally, maybe you want to push out a survey. Now that's a whole other suite of products. With Posthog, you can do this all in one place, whether you're using Next.js, vanilla JavaScript, or any other kind of framework. Let's start with just going over each of the products that Posthog offers, and then we can look at a dashboard for a production application. We're actually going to be looking at Unkey, and then I'll show you how easy it is to implement some of these features out of the gate. So the first big feature, which is actually what they're most known for, is their product analytics. It allows you to do all sorts of things such as understanding funnels, user paths, life cycles. You can even add graphs and trends, which we'll be looking at because we use them at Unkey. And they have web analytics, which is the new feature that they've just released that is in beta, which is essentially the same thing as Plausible, Vercel, or any of the other products. On top of that, you have session replays, so you can understand how your users interact with your web application. It's also available on iOS, so if you're not an iOS app, you can do it there. And it gives you everything that you need, the event timeline, the network requests, the console logs, and you can actually watch the user do whatever you want. Of course, feature flags makes it really easy. You add a feature flag in the dashboard, and then you look for that feature flag in your code base. And then you can do things like slow releases, or you can give canary to specific people and understand whether or not the brand new feature or large change that you made to your application actually breaks it. And with a single click, you can instantly roll back to the previous version so that you can slowly roll out those features. Of course, A/B testing is what I just talked about. It allows you to run goals and run metrics against it. Finally, if you need a survey, maybe you want to know whether or not someone is actually going to enjoy your product, how it works, and you can set specific rules for specific people. And then they have the data pipelines and the data warehouse, which will work soon, but this is also in beta, but it allows you to essentially move your analytical product to something like S3, BigQuery, Redshift, and then use the API to kind of do some extra work. So that's an overview of the product itself, but let's actually dive in and look at what the dashboard looks like. Now we're logged in, it may look really overwhelming, but let's talk about how this kind of works. So here we have page views, and this includes every page that a user could log into, and we can go in and look at the details if we so wish, but I'll switch over to a different dashboard that doesn't actually have some internal pieces that I don't need you guys to see. Then over here, you have your referral and where they came from. So for example, this is a popular one, which is Andreas, my CTO. He has a redirect that comes here, and people often come in the last 14 days. You can see that some of it came from unkey.dev into our application, some from YouTube, some from Dev2, and GitHub, etc., etc. Then we can look at our daily active users. These are the people that have actually logged in to our dashboard, and we can check those against what we get from Clerk and make sure that we are all in agreement here. As you can see, you get trends and troughs. So obviously on the 23rd and the 24th, it was kind of a slow day due to it being Christmas time. And then we picked back up, and then we dropped back down when it was the 1st of Jan, and then we've picked back up again. We can look at growth, and we can look about how many are new users, how many have been resurrected, how many are dormant, how many people are returning, how much retention we actually get from those users. And of course, here we're looking at marketing and login conversions. So we see how many people actually go from page view into logging in, which at the moment, it's around 6.3%, which is pretty good considering we're quite new. So that's product analytics, and we'll look more in detail in a second about how that works. But I want to show off web analytics. So you can see right now we don't have this bounce rate and session duration, so that these might be incorrect, but that's okay with me. Essentially, it gives you all the analytics that you're used to. You can see the unique visitors, and on top of that, it's current versus previous. So you can see last week's versus this week's. On top of that, you see all the paths that are the top paths. So you can see that like /app/API and auth sign-in, which are both basically both of our areas that you need to see at least once to even get into the application. And then on top of that is things like docs, the blog, our pricing page, /new, which is where you create a workspace, settings and billings, and then our career page as well. Then in similar fashion, you get to see the same thing that you saw with the other pieces. You get to see all the referrers, what device type people are on. And as you can see, 75% or more are on desktop versus browser. And then we can look at what browsers they're using. And we can see that Chrome is still king. Safari is just after that. And then obviously everybody else. And we can see the OS if we really care about what's happening here. You can see that most people are coming in on a Mac, followed by Windows, followed by iOS, followed by Linux, and then finally Android at the bottom. We can see where our users are coming from across the globe. So we've got people in America, people in India. We can see that we've had some in Russia and some in the United Kingdom. And they highlight blue for the countries where you're getting the most visitors from. And then you can see your daily and weekly retention. So you can see that sometimes this retention drops off. So you can use this for your home pages, your marketing pages, all those things that you don't actually have behind a login screen. And then you can use your product analytics to do the rest. Right now, we're kind of using both to do both parts, and that's okay. We are doing that because I want to be able to show you guys, if you go to our website, you can actually look at these analytics. So we're doing the same thing here, and we're looking at page view by path, and we can actually go into show details here and make it big. So if we click view here, you can see all the pages that we are showing, the total sum, and the dates that they've been on. And we can look at these graphs and see the changes that are happening. And if we are concerned about maybe drop off, or we're concerned that one day we had a big spike, we can look at what we released on that day. On the 8th, maybe it's a bit higher than it was, say, on the 2nd. Why is this happening? And we can start digging in to these pieces. Then you get something called events. And events allows you to essentially look at a journey of a user. Then if I add a filter here and we add email, which is a custom property that we have, and we set it to Michael at Unki, who's a user here, you can see all of the events that this person has done in the last 180 days. You can see what pages they've hit, where they're going, what pages they've looked at in the documentation, for example. Maybe they've been looking at what errors we produce. And then you can go inside of these and actually look at the timestamp, the user ID, the string, what browser they were on, all those important things that you might need. On top of that, inside of this product, we have things called session replay. If I just click this one, for example, you can see that they've been reading this blog post that was posted by Andreas. They've gone through, and then there'll be a break pause here in a minute, but you could be to fast forward it because that person was reading and they didn't make any movement. You can skip through, you can replay, you can do all those kinds of things. On top of that, you can actually look at all the errors, everything that happened on the page, how long it took for the DOM to be interactable, all of those essential pieces that you can use to essentially improve your product. Then on top of that, we're not using feature flags, but you can enable this and then give you percentage of users or certain groups or everyone a feature flag so that they can have a specific usage. On top of that, A/B, we're also not using this right now because we're not doing any experimentations, but in the future, we can do this by just enabling it, and then that will work based upon a filtering system that you use. Surveys, for example, here is one. We have one called user interview. Basically, this allows us as a user to have a user view the survey and decide whether or not they actually wanted to book a time with us. And if they book a time with us, they can then take a look. And this looks something like this. If I go to overview, it looks like this. Would you be interested in participating in a custom interview? They click this button right here, and it redirects them to a cal.com user interview page where they can pick a time that works for them. And we can chat to them about Unki, what they're doing, how they're using it, etc., etc. Then they have things like early access features, allow users to basically be in a public beta if you so wish. They actually use that themselves here to provide you with ways to access some of their content. And that is essentially everything that is available. If you click this feature preview down here, this is how you enable web analytics if you're interested in that. It's in beta, but it's been really good so far. And then you have options for BI if you're using that, and session replay with network capture. So that's everything there. You can enable and disable all of these features as you so wish and use them however you want. Now, I guess the question is, how do you enable this? How do you use this in a Next.js application, for example? So let me show you how it works in Unki and what we're doing right now to identify our users and then link those together with their anonymous access session that they had originally. So in our application, we have two things. One, we have a lib here, which is called posthog.ts. And essentially this allows us to use the Posthog client anywhere in our application where we may need it. And we're using app router here. So this is Next.js 14. And then we have another section for Posthog that is called the Posthog provider. Now what this does is what essentially runs the entire thing. We're using this provider to capture and initiate Posthog when somebody hits a specific page. So here you can see we're using a few different things here, and we'll talk about each of those in question. So first we have the init here, and it just checks to see if it's a type of window is undefined, and if it is, then we don't do anything, but otherwise we init Posthog. Then we have a page view here, and essentially what we do is we grab the search parameters, and then if there's a path name, we add those search parameters to the URL, and then we capture that page event. And then we just use a use effect here on the path name and the search parameters so that we can make sure that we capture them all. Then we have this, which is called the Posthog identifier. Essentially what it does here is it takes a user, which is a user from Clerk, and then adds this to their Posthog identifier. So what it does is it adds the user ID here, which then gets replaced from their anonymous tag into the Clerk user ID, and then we add these pieces and when they were created. And essentially the idea here is for us to be able to identify them if they're having an issue and easily look up the user, and then maybe reach out to them, or if they're reaching out to us, we can actually go and find them in Posthog and see what happened for support cases. Then on top of that, we have this Posthog event. This essentially just captures any event that is happening. And then finally, the Posthog provider, which is a wrapper that we use for Posthog. Now, if we go and look in our actual application about where we're using these, so we can look at this identifier first, Posthog identify. We're using it here in the client. So if I look at this, essentially what we're doing here is checking if the user is already set up with APIs. And then we're actually checking if the user is loaded and we have a user from Clerk, and then we just identify the user and we upsert. One other place that we do this is in the create API section, which is where we create a new API. And this is when a user is new, essentially, they will create this user. And this allows us to capture it either immediately on login or immediately as they create their project. So we have those two, and that just essentially allows us to link up. And the good thing is because the user ID it never changes in Clerk unless the user deletes their account, we never have to worry about some sort of weird clash where the user ID doesn't match the user. So that's what we're using for that. We also have this Posthog page view, which we're actually just using in our web layout here. So if you go to the layout, we're using suspense here and putting our page view in here and then wrapping our entire body in this Posthog provider. Now, of course, we can actually make more changes to this if we wanted to. So if we go back to our Posthog provider here, you can see right now I have captured page view disabled by false, and that's because we're using it in Next.js through suspense. And I also have session recordings disabled. Now I could just enable this or delete this line and enable it in the dashboard. But what this allows you to do is essentially skip parts of your application. So if we wanted to enable this somewhere else in our application, we can just use Posthog here to essentially just say, hey, on this page, start the recording. And then if they leave, stop the recording. And that allows us to have more flexibility. It's currently turned off because we had a wild influx of users and we ended up recording somewhere in the case of somewhere near 100,000 sessions in a very short period of time. And we wanted to make sure that we're actually recording useful data and not just people reading blog posts or pages that are not important. So right now it has been disabled. I guess now you're thinking this is going to be a really pricey product that you're not going to be able to afford, even if you are a startup or maybe you're just on a blog or whatever, but their pricing is incredibly good for no credit card required. So by default, if you've got no credit card at all, you're looking at 1 million events a month, and then you get dashboard funnels and graphs and trends. So you can essentially build out anything that you may look at. You do miss out on a few other things like group analytics or life size or data retention is only a year versus 7. And then advanced paths and things like that. But you can turn on this unlimited, all features, no limitation for just adding your credit card. But you still get those first 1 million events for free regardless of your account. And then every million after that is charged out at a specific rate. And it's very, very reasonable to get these events. And then for session replays, you're talking 5,000 a month for free with 0 credit cards. So you can do this for 5,000 a month. And then you can do all sorts of things like, so for example, you can make playlists. You can still capture everything. The only thing you can't do is export them out. And they retain them for up to 1 month. On the unlimited account, they give you 3 months. It's 4 cents per after that, and it goes up and up and up. Feature flags counts as 1 million as well. So you can basically do the same thing, 1 million events, 1 million feature flags, which is unreal and really unheard of most of all in the industry. Surveys, you can do up to 250 a month for free, and you get specific questions. You can't do multiple questions, but that's okay. But you still get the important things like user property targeting or user sampling. And then they're charging them out at a fairly reasonable rate after the fact. And finally, you get integrations for free. The only one you don't get is app metrics, but you still can hit Discord about new actions, Slack. You can use the Zapier to do other things. And then finally, for your support here, you basically get a bunch of good support. You can do SSO versus Google, GitHub, or GitLab. You can add in community support there, and then just standard terms and conditions. But if you spend a whole bunch of cash, they will give you a dedicated channel. But overall, that makes it a really good deal. And then there are some discounts. If you're a startup with 2 years old and raised less than 5, you can join the startup program. You can also have 50% off in most cases if you're a nonprofit. And of course, if you prefer, it's bring your own. Self-host the entire Posthog product using a Docker, and they basically give you exactly what you want to do. So it's a Linux virtual machine, and they recommend that you have at least 4 gigs of RAM to handle any surges, and then just an A record, and that's about it. And then you just follow this, and then you can do it all by yourself. And then you can use this instead of actually paying for the service. You can just host your own version, which is entirely up to you. And you can check out their code at github.com/posthog, I believe is where they are hosted. And you can find out all about all the different repositories they have, all the projects they have. And of course, if you want to help in any possible way, they have currently 366 open issues, and they can and will have good labeling. So you can look at the label here. I believe they have one that may be good first issue right here. So if you're a newcomer, here's a bunch of good first issues that you can tackle. So there you have it. The ultimate analytics, session recordings, feature flags, A/B testing, and everything you could possibly need to improve your product for your users. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you click right here. There's going to be a video driven by the algorithm. I guarantee you'll enjoy it. And of course, if you're not subscribed, click right here.